My name is Bootman Bill, and I'm here to tell you a story. This is the story of Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. In the countless child soldiers that were trained in Africa in the 1980s, one stood out. He was a Liberian boy with hair blonde as the sand and skin white as the snow. His name was Jack. He was so effective a killer, the boy with the angelic face and a knife that ripped the bodies of his targets. He was quickly feared as Jack the Ripper. When Jack was rescued, he repressed his past and would remain in a state of blissful denial until the terrorist incident of Big Shell in 2009. There, he infiltrated as a special agent, and through the lives he took, he remembered it all. The truth about his past. The truth about himself. And truth hurts. In the years that followed, Jack had chosen to go by his codename Raiden, abandoned his skills and his natural body, and embraced the way of the ninja in an all-new, synthetic body. He became a cyborg, half man, half machine. All sad. But his emo-ness was countered by the coolness factor of his robot ninja-ness. When he was reunited with his wife Rose and their son, he set out to look for a job. Unable to find one due to racism over him being a cyborg, he joined a private military company with some old friends. PMCs were functioning as security agencies at the time. When one of his missions failed and a rival PMC killed his VIP, he was pissed. As soon as he healed, he got an upgraded body, turned off his pain receptors, and set out to set things straight with his ninja high-frequency blade. His only help? Ethnically diverse cast of support characters that were major pussies and only helped by radio. Raiden has always been unstable, and he knew it. He knew it when he slit people's throats as a kid. He knew it when he put a bullet in enemy skulls in the Big Shell. And he definitely knew it when he was using his sword. Cutting was a second nature to him, and much as he liked to deny it, he'd taste the blood on this blade. People didn't generally frown upon it. Cutting people in half was just immensely satisfying. Attacking and doing combos came so naturally. He took one swing with that sword and chopped people and chopped other cyborgs and chopped planes and helicopters and Ant-Man robots. He even scored a few kills against Metal Gears. He could combo just using his own blade, or with one of the weapons he picked up from fallen enemy bigwigs of the enemy PMC Desperado. One long rod he got from a chick in particular had such a long range that nobody stood in his way. He even picked up countless rocket launchers, homing missiles, and various types of grenades. But his sword was so powerful he pretty much forgot he had all that. And when he picked up a barrel and a cardboard box, he reminisced about the days in Big Shell, when he could slip by enemies unnoticed. Ninjas were masters of stealth, but sadly Raiden had grown old and couldn't remember his old stealth tricks. Oh, he could still stealth a mission, but his arsenal was too slim. His radar old but useless, and he couldn't lock onto an enemy to scout out the place for more than just 1 second before his awesomeness took over him and he had to stare at himself again. When he did do it, he was tense and he felt the rush of adrenaline overtaking him, but in the end, cutting was so deeply ingrained in him he just stopped bothering. With dozens of enemies surrounding him, many of them bigger and stronger than himself, the only way to survive was to learn how to counter their moves. For a fighter as skilled as Raiden, parrying came naturally. It was part of his combo. All he had to do was lean toward the enemy that was attacking and raise his blade. Trading in the ancient methods of meditation and illusion of the old shinobi for cutting-edge technology and swords, Raiden could also focus really hard and move faster than a speeding bullet. When that fast, he could chop his enemies into 1,000 little pieces. He called this technique Zandatsu. Zandatsu proved life-saving as it allowed him to absorb something called electrolytes. Raiden sliced his enemies finely, and with one simple move, with one simple dance, he ripped out their spines time and again and absorbed their electrolytes, which replenished his health and energy. Zandatsu also allowed him to do a precision cut. Precision cutting seemed like a good idea at first, But one doesn't become a world-class killer without being a nervous wreck, and once such a person can't fine-tune their aim, boy, did he get pissed when a few of his enemies proved to be unbeatable without precision cutting. During this latest mission, Raiden faced his biggest adversary in the face of Senator Armstrong, a hard-line conservative asshole moonlighting as a writer for Fox News. This piece of shit was trafficking children organs and transplanting them into cyborg bodies to create a new breed of child soldier. What a dick, Raiden thought as he boarded his Team Knight Rider car, blade in one hand and pet robot dog in the other, and headed back home. To the United States of America. Naturally, Jack found a personal stake in this. His mission transformed into one of justice and vengeance, or even revengeance, trying to save more children from sharing his own fate. Armstrong was eventually beat in a battle Raiden found oddly disproportionate in difficulty to the rest of his mission, but he cut the Senator down, and everything was alright. Raiden dealt with adversity and came out a better man for it. He fought hard. He beat giant robots single-handedly. He bought new armor and other upgrades. He rejoined old friends and made some new ones. He even got a dog. And he did it all, not once complaining about all the transparent American liberal preaching he had to endure from his friends on the way. As the dust settled, he looked at the sunset. He knew right then that another rising was awaiting, and next time, he'd be even better at it. This is the story of the little boy that could, and Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance is fun and addicting. The story is smarter than it looks at first, and the combat system is near perfect. Combos are easy to pull off and very satisfying, while the parrying mechanic is achieved easily by tilting the movement controls toward the direction of the enemy attack and hitting the attack button. As a friend mentioned on Twitter, most block mechanics either encourage turtling or don't absorb enough damage to be useful, and this is a problem that Revengeance easily sidesteps. There is a wide array of weapons, both for melee combos and ranged weapons like homing missiles and grenades, but the latter just end up stocking up as traditional attacks are just a lot more engaging to perform. There are also stealth segments that are surprisingly tense despite their simplicity, but they do come off as tucked-on afterthoughts that break flow. The big problems with MGR start with Zendatsu, the cat-at-will mechanic that was touted when the game was announced as Metal Gear Solid Rising all those years ago. The hacking mechanic for replenishing health is great, but precision cutting is utterly broken and better not used at all. Unfortunately, in a few occasions the game demands you use it, particularly in a few boss battles and for some collectibles. Boss battles are well designed for the most part, with the exception of the final boss where difficulty just skyrockets and the fight methodology is all over the place. The camera is also slightly problematic, particularly when surrounded by multiple enemies, and mostly during the stealth segments. For some odd reason, the camera always reverts to Raiden when left alone, which can be a pain when trying to scout out the area and plan out a path. However, for me the biggest drawback is in the story, and especially the final villain Senator Armstrong, and with the coded conversations. This wasn't written by Hideo Kojima, and it shows. A lot has been said about Kojima's writing, but the man injects a certain degree of sophistication and subtlety he doesn't get enough credit for. The man takes one position: war sucks, and then he just shares his own thoughts and concerns. For every point there is usually a compelling counterpoint, and that's why he never comes off as particularly preachy. Sadly, MGR sides itself heavily with hardline American liberal politics and rumbles on about them without any counterpoints or actual philosophizing and questioning anything. The game is short and takes an average of 6 hours to beat the campaign, but there are plenty of unlockable costumes, weapons and upgrades, as well as VR missions and other collectibles. The Steam version also comes with 2 DLCs bundled in. It looks good enough and sounds good enough. It's also surprisingly well optimized on the PC. I can run the game with everything on full on my low to mid-end PC at a steady 30 frames per second, but if needed I'd advise dropping the resolution and all the cosmetic settings to achieve the 60 frames per second. It's a game changer. As a Metal Gear Solid fan, something like Revengeance at first comes off as a sellout, but one can make the same argument for every title in the main series since Snake Eater. I know I have. Spin-offs are inevitable, they are guaranteed some sales and allow for some creative freedom, so it's a win-win in my book.
And if not for them, after all, we wouldn't have Metal Gear Acid and Metal Gear Acid 2 on the PSP, two of the most unique and enjoyable games in the entire franchise. As such, Revengeance comes with a high recommendation from me for all its entertaining combat system and depth of gameplay that will easily counter its otherwise short length, and it will encourage multiple playthroughs.
Just like me, trying to make history.